Lena had always loved the forest. There was something calming about the way sunlight filtered through the tall trees and the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. Today, she had decided to take a longer walk than usual. The weather was perfect, and the fresh air made her feel alive. She packed a small bag with water, a snack, and her notebook. She thought she would take a simple walk, maybe find a quiet place to sit and write. The forest started off familiar. Lena recognized many of the trees and the little paths she had walked before. Birds sang in the branches, and squirrels ran along the trunks of the trees. She smiled to herself as she watched a rabbit hop across a clearing. The sun was warm on her back, and everything seemed peaceful. She felt free. After a while, Lena decided to take a path she had never walked before. It was narrow, and leaves covered the ground. The deeper she went, the taller and denser the trees became. The forest felt different. It was quieter, except for the occasional sound of a twig snapping underfoot or a bird calling far above. Lena stopped for a moment to look around. She realized she could no longer see the familiar landmarks. Everything looked the same. Every tree, every shadow, every path seemed identical. She took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. She told herself that if she kept walking, she would find her way back to the main path. Lena thought about the directions her father had taught her. Always pay attention to the sun, always mark your path, always trust your instincts. She had followed all of these rules, but now she felt lost. Her phone showed no signal. She looked down at it, hoping for a map, but the screen only said, "No service." She put it back in her bag and continued walking. As she moved forward, Lena noticed the forest changing. The trees were older, thicker, and covered in moss. Vines hung from the branches, and the sunlight barely reached the ground. Small ferns grew everywhere, and the smell of damp soil and pine filled the air. She paused again, listening. The wind moved through the trees, but no other sounds were near. No animals, no footsteps, nothing but the soft sound of leaves. Her heart beat a little faster. She told herself it was just the forest being quiet. Hours seemed to pass. Lena's legs grew tired, and her stomach reminded her that she had not eaten. She sat on a fallen log and took a drink of water. As she rested, she tried to think of the last time she had seen a familiar tree or a path she knew. Nothing came to mind. She realized she had gone much farther than she intended. The sun was slowly moving down, and the shadows in the forest were growing longer. Just as she was about to get up and continue, Lena saw something unusual. Between the trees, in a small clearing, stood a structure she had never seen before. At first, she thought it was just an old shed. But as she walked closer, she realized it was an old wagon cabin. The wooden wheels were half buried in the ground, and the wood was covered in moss and vines. The roof leaned slightly to one side, and some of the boards looked cracked and weathered. It looked like it had been there for a very long time. Lena approached slowly. She felt a strange mixture of curiosity and caution. The cabin seemed out of place. No path had led her here, and it was far from any part of the forest she knew. She stopped at the door and touched the wood. It was rough and cold under her fingers. She tried the handle, and to her surprise, it moved easily. The door was not locked. She stepped inside. The air was dry and still, carrying the smell of old wood and dust. Sunlight fell through small cracks in the walls, lighting up the tiny space. The cabin was small but organized. There was a narrow bed in the corner, a wooden table in the center, and shelves built into the walls. Everything was old, but it looked carefully placed, like someone had taken great care of it. Lena walked slowly, her eyes scanning every corner. She noticed a small trunk under the bed, a few jars on the shelves, and an old lantern hanging from a hook. Then she saw it. On the table lay a small wooden box. It was different from the rest of the cabin. It looked cleaner, almost as if someone had touched it recently. A symbol was carved into its lid. Lena did not recognize it, but it felt important. Her heart beat faster. Something about the box called to her, but she hesitated. She had learned that old things could be dangerous or hold secrets that were better left alone. Still, curiosity pushed her forward. She reached out and touched the box. The wood was smooth, and the symbol seemed to glow faintly under her fingers. She tried to lift the lid, but it would not move. Lena looked around the cabin for clues. There were no notes, no keys, nothing that could help her open it. She ran her fingers along the carvings, hoping to find a hidden latch or button. Nothing happened. She sighed and stepped back. Her mind raced. Who had built this cabin? Why was it here, in the middle of the forest, hidden for so long? And why did the box feel like it had been waiting for her? She decided to sit at the table. Lena needed a moment to think. The forest outside grew darker, and the shadows reached closer to the cabin. She could hear the wind moving through the trees, and for a moment, the cabin felt like the only safe place in the forest. She took out her notebook and wrote down everything she had seen, hoping it would help her make sense of this strange discovery. As she wrote, Lena noticed more details. There were faint marks on the floor, as if someone had walked here in the past. A few small pieces of furniture were polished, but most were covered in dust. A window at the back of the cabin showed the forest stretching endlessly behind her. The world outside seemed to wait quietly, as if it knew she had found something special. Lena did not yet understand that the cabin and the box were part of a story that had been waiting more than 100 years. Someone had hidden this place carefully, leaving it untouched for decades. And now, it had chosen her. She felt a strange excitement mixed with fear. The forest was no longer just a place to walk. It had become a place of mystery, a place where history, secrets, and destiny met. She did not know what would happen next, but she felt certain that her life was about to change. Lena stayed at the table for a long time, staring at the small box. Her fingers itched to open it, but she also felt a strange sense of respect. Something about this box told her that it was not ordinary. She wondered who had left it here and why. It seemed like the cabin had been forgotten by the world, yet it had waited patiently for someone to arrive. That someone was her. The forest outside grew darker as the sun moved closer to the horizon. Shadows stretched across the cabin, making the corners feel deeper and the air cooler. Lena pulled her jacket tighter around herself. She realized she would need to stay in the cabin until morning. The thought made her nervous. She did not know if there were wild animals nearby or if the forest held other surprises. But the cabin felt safe, like a shelter from the unknown. She decided to explore the cabin more carefully. Lena moved to the narrow bed in the corner. The mattress was thin and covered with a faded quilt. She ran her hand across it and found it surprisingly clean. It seemed as though someone had cared for this place long ago. Beneath the bed, she found a small drawer. Inside were a few papers, yellowed with age. She carefully picked them up. The papers were strange. They had writing that was mostly faded, but some words were still clear. Lena could read a few names, dates, and notes about the forest. Some of the writing mentioned journeys, maps, and treasures hidden in the woods. She felt a shiver run through her. Could this cabin have belonged to someone who explored the forest long ago? Someone who had secrets to hide? Her attention returned to the small wooden box. She looked at it from every angle. The symbol on its lid was unusual. It looked like a circle with lines spreading outward, almost like a sun or a star. She tried to remember if she had seen it anywhere before, but it was completely unfamiliar. Lena wondered if the symbol meant something magical or if it was just a mark from the past. The wind outside grew stronger. Trees swayed, and the leaves rustled loudly. Lena could hear the forest as if it were speaking to her. It was strange to feel so alone and yet so connected to the world around her. She realized that finding this cabin was not an accident. Something had led her here, something bigger than herself. She looked around the cabin again. The shelves held jars with small objects inside. Some looked like seeds, others like tiny stones. There were tools, carefully arranged, and a few small books with leather covers. Lena opened one of the books. The pages were filled with sketches of plants, animals, and strange markings. She recognized some of the plants as ones she had seen in the forest, but others were unfamiliar. The book looked like a record of discoveries made long ago. Lena felt a mix of excitement and fear. She had always loved mysteries, but this was unlike anything she had ever imagined. She knew she had stumbled upon something important. She could feel the history of the cabin, the lives of the people who had once lived there, and the secrets they had hidden. And now, she was part of that story. As night fell, the cabin became quiet. Lena lit the old lantern she found on the hook. Its light filled the small space with a warm glow. The shadows on the walls danced, and the cabin felt alive. Lena set the lantern on the table beside the wooden box. She knew she needed to rest, but her mind would not stop thinking about the box. She decided to make the bed ready. Lena arranged the quilt and pillow carefully. She ate a small snack and drank some water, trying to calm her nerves. The forest outside was dark and mysterious, but inside the cabin, she felt a sense of peace. It was as if the cabin itself was welcoming her, offering protection and comfort. Before lying down, Lena tried one more time with the box. She pushed gently on the lid, hoping it would open. Nothing happened. She ran her fingers along the carvings, pressing lightly in case there was a hidden mechanism. Still, the lid did not move. Lena sighed, realizing that the box would wait until the morning. For now, she had to sleep and regain her strength. She lay down on the narrow bed, the lantern casting soft light across the cabin. Lena thought about her day, about how she had entered the forest and found herself lost. She thought about the cabin, the box, and the papers she had discovered. Everything felt like part of a puzzle waiting to be solved. Her eyelids grew heavy, but her mind kept turning. She wondered what secrets the box held and who had hidden them. As she drifted toward sleep, Lena felt a strange sense of connection to the past. The cabin, the forest, and the box seemed to reach out to her. It was as if the people who had been here long ago wanted her to continue their story. She could almost hear whispers, soft voices carried by the wind, guiding her toward the answers she sought. The night passed slowly. Outside, the forest was alive with the sounds of animals and the rustling of leaves. The moonlight filtered through the trees, casting silver shadows on the cabin walls. Lena slept lightly, her dreams filled with images of the forest, the box, and faces she did not recognize. She felt a sense of anticipation, like something important was about to happen. When Lena woke, the first light of dawn was entering the cabin through the small window. The forest outside looked peaceful, almost magical. Birds were singing, and the morning air was cool and fresh. Lena felt a renewed sense of energy. She sat up on the bed and looked at the wooden box again. The box seemed to glow softly in the morning light, as if it knew today would be the day she would open it. Lena ate a small breakfast from her bag, trying to prepare herself for what was ahead. She knew that she could not leave the cabin without understanding the box and its contents. Something deep inside her told her that this was her moment, the beginning of an adventure that had waited for over a century. She took a deep breath and approached the table. Her fingers touched the carvings once more. The symbol seemed to respond to her touch, faintly warm under her hands. Lena felt her heart beat faster. She realized that opening this box was not just about curiosity. It was about discovering a story, a mystery, and a connection to the past. She knelt beside the table and examined the box carefully. There were no hinges visible, no locks, no keyholes. It seemed impossible to open, yet Lena felt certain that there was a way. She ran her fingers along every edge, pressing gently, listening carefully. Her mind worked to remember everything she had seen in the cabin, all the notes, books, and papers. Perhaps they held the clue. Hours passed as Lena studied the box. She felt a mixture of frustration and excitement. She wanted to understand, to uncover the secret, but the box remained stubbornly closed. And then, as the morning sun climbed higher, Lena noticed something she had not seen before. A small mark, hidden in the carving, looked like a tiny arrow pointing to a corner of the box. Her pulse quickened. Could this be the key? She pressed gently where the arrow pointed. Suddenly, the lid shifted slightly. Lena's eyes widened. Her careful touch had done something. She pressed a little more, and with a soft click, the box opened. Inside, there was a small, folded piece of paper and a wooden pendant. Lena lifted the paper carefully and unfolded it. The handwriting was old, faded but readable. It spoke of a hidden treasure, a secret knowledge, and a message for the person who found the box. Lena's eyes scanned the words, her excitement growing. The pendant was small, carved with the same symbol as the box. She held it in her hand and felt warmth spreading through her fingers. Lena realized that she had discovered something extraordinary. The cabin, the forest, and the box had waited for her. She felt a deep sense of wonder, knowing that her adventure was only beginning. The day ahead would be filled with discoveries, challenges, and secrets that had waited for over a century. Lena held the wooden pendant in her hand and stared at it for a long time. The symbol carved into it matched the one on the box and the papers she had seen. She felt a strange connection to it, as if it had a story to tell. The paper inside the box also fascinated her. It spoke of a secret path in the forest, a place untouched for more than 100 years. According to the note, only the person who found the box could follow this path. She folded the paper carefully and placed it in her pocket. Lena decided to study the pendant more closely. It was smooth and warm, almost alive in her hand. She turned it over and noticed tiny markings along the edge. They were difficult to see, but they looked like directions or symbols pointing somewhere. She tried to memorize them, knowing that they might guide her. The cabin felt different now. The morning sun had fully entered, and light spilled into every corner. Dust sparkled in the sunlight, giving the room a magical feeling. Lena knew she could not stay here forever. She needed to follow the clues and understand the message of the box. But before she left, she wanted to make sure she had explored everything. She went to the shelves again and looked at the books. One book caught her attention. It was filled with maps, drawings, and notes about the forest. Some pages showed the cabin and paths that no longer existed. Others marked places with symbols similar to the one on her pendant. Lena realized that the person who had lived here had carefully documented the forest, leaving a trail for someone to follow. Lena felt her excitement grow. The forest was no longer just a place to walk. It was a puzzle, a map, and a secret world waiting to be discovered. She imagined the person who had hidden the box long ago. They had trusted that someone would find it, someone who could understand the forest as they did. Now, Lena was that person. She stepped outside the cabin and looked around. The forest was alive with the sounds of birds, insects, and the wind moving through the leaves. Lena took a deep breath and let the fresh air fill her lungs. She held the pendant tightly and looked at the trees. Somewhere out there, hidden in the forest, was the path the note had spoken about. She knew she had to find it. Lena began walking carefully, following the directions in her mind from the symbols on the pendant. She moved slowly, observing the ground, the trees, and the plants. Every small detail seemed important. She noticed patterns in the moss on the trees, marks in the soil, and shapes in the fallen branches. It was as if the forest itself was guiding her. Hours passed as she followed the clues. The path was not easy. The forest became thicker, and the light dimmed under the dense canopy. Lena had to climb over fallen logs, move around thick bushes, and step carefully over roots. She felt tired, but she did not give up. Every step brought her closer to the secret the cabin had promised. At one point, Lena reached a small stream. The water was clear and cold. She knelt down to drink and wash her hands. As she looked into the water, she noticed something strange. The reflection of the forest seemed to shift, showing shapes and symbols she had seen in the cabin. Lena blinked and stared again. It was like the forest itself was alive, helping her find the right way. She followed the stream, walking carefully along the bank. Soon, she noticed a small clearing. In the center of the clearing stood an ancient tree. Its trunk was wide and twisted, and its roots formed shapes like stairs leading up to a hollow in the base. The pendant in Lena's hand grew warm. She knew this was the place the box had led her to. Lena approached the tree slowly. She examined the roots and the hollow. Inside the hollow, there was a small wooden panel, similar to the one on the box. She placed the pendant near it, and the panel shifted slightly. A soft light glowed from within. Lena's heart raced. She pushed the panel gently and discovered a hidden compartment. Inside, there was another box, smaller than the first, and a folded letter. She opened the letter carefully. The handwriting was old but clear. It spoke of courage, discovery, and a journey through the forest that would reveal hidden knowledge. The letter said that whoever found the box must be patient, careful, and brave. It explained that the smaller box contained a key to the next part of the journey, something that had been protected for more than 100 years. Lena lifted the smaller box. It was made of dark wood and had tiny carvings on all sides. She opened it slowly. Inside, she found a small, intricately carved key and another piece of paper. The paper had a map drawn on it. It showed parts of the forest she had never seen, paths that seemed impossible, and symbols that matched the ones on her pendant. Lena realized that her adventure was far from over. She studied the map carefully. The path led deeper into the forest, to a place that had not been visited for generations. The notes explained that this was a place of learning, of discovery, and of secrets that were meant to be shared only with someone worthy. Lena felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She knew she had to continue. The forest around her seemed to encourage her. Birds flew above, the wind whispered through the trees, and the sunlight highlighted the path ahead. Lena felt as if the forest itself was alive, guiding her steps and rewarding her courage. She took a deep breath and began walking again, following the map, the symbols, and the clues that had been waiting for her for over a century. As she moved, Lena thought about the person who had hidden the boxes and left the letters. They had trusted that someone would follow the path, someone who could understand the forest and its secrets. Lena felt a deep sense of responsibility. She was not just exploring for herself, she was continuing a story, protecting the past, and discovering truths that had been hidden for generations. The day passed as Lena followed the map. She crossed streams, climbed hills, and moved through dense areas of forest. Each step brought new discoveries. She found unusual plants, patterns in the rocks, and signs that the forest had been carefully observed long ago. The pendant around her neck glowed softly whenever she was near an important clue, guiding her through the most difficult parts of the journey. By the time evening approached, Lena reached a small hill. From the top, she could see the forest stretching endlessly in all directions. She took a moment to rest and look at the view. The sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. Lena felt a mixture of awe and determination. She knew the secret she sought was close. The forest had tested her patience, her courage, and her attention, but she had followed its guidance faithfully. As she prepared to descend the hill, Lena noticed a faint path leading into a valley below. The trees formed an arch above it, and the light of the setting sun created a golden glow along the trail. She smiled, knowing that this was the next step in the journey. With the pendant in her hand, the key in her pocket, and the map in her mind, Lena stepped forward. She felt a sense of excitement unlike anything she had ever felt. The forest had led her here, and the adventure was only just beginning. Lena followed the faint path down the hill, her heart beating fast with excitement. The golden light of the setting sun made the forest feel magical. Shadows of the trees stretched long across the trail, and the air smelled fresh and earthy. Every step felt important. The forest seemed alive, guiding her toward the next secret. She clutched the pendant tightly in her hand and kept the key safe in her pocket. The path led her to a small valley surrounded by tall trees. It was quiet here, even quieter than the forest around the cabin. Lena noticed that the ground was soft with moss, and small flowers grew between the roots of the trees. She stepped carefully, following the directions in the map. The valley was mysterious but beautiful. The sunlight made the leaves glow, and the air felt warm and calm. As Lena walked, she remembered the letters and the notes from the cabin. They had mentioned patience, courage, and attention to detail. She realized that the forest had been testing her. Every clue, every symbol, every pattern she had noticed had led her here. She smiled to herself. She had trusted her instincts, and it had brought her closer to the secret. After some time, Lena came to a narrow stream. The water was clear and cold, running over smooth stones. She knelt down and touched the water. It felt refreshing. As she looked around, she saw unusual markings on the rocks along the bank. The symbols were similar to those on her pendant and the boxes. Lena examined them closely. They formed a pattern, a path leading further into the valley. Excited, Lena followed the symbols along the stream. The path became more challenging. Roots twisted across the ground, and rocks made her careful with every step. But she felt confident. The forest had always been her guide. She noticed the smallest details, the direction of the moss, the curve of the roots, the way the branches bent. Every part of the forest seemed to be a clue waiting to be discovered. After walking for some time, Lena reached a small clearing in the center of the valley. In the middle of the clearing stood an enormous tree. Its trunk was wide, and its bark was rough and covered with moss. There was a hollow at the base of the tree, large enough for a person to step inside. Lena felt a shiver of excitement. This had to be the place mentioned in the letters. She approached the hollow and examined it carefully. The pendant in her hand felt warm. She held it close to the hollow, and suddenly, a soft light appeared. It was faint at first but grew brighter as she moved the pendant closer. Lena realized that the pendant was the key to unlocking the secret of the tree. Her heart raced with anticipation. Lena stepped closer and looked inside the hollow. There was a small wooden panel, similar to the one in the first box. She inserted the key she had found earlier. The panel shifted slightly, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was another small box and a rolled-up scroll. Lena carefully lifted the scroll and unrolled it. The scroll contained a map and instructions. It showed a series of paths through the forest, hidden clearings, and ancient trees marked with the same symbols she had been following. The writing explained that this was a journey of discovery, meant to teach her about the forest and the secrets it held. Lena read every word carefully, feeling a sense of wonder. The small box inside the compartment was made of dark wood, intricately carved with symbols and designs. Lena opened it slowly. Inside, she found a collection of small crystals, each glowing faintly in the dim light. There was also a small, folded note. She opened the note and read the words carefully. It spoke of the energy of the forest, the importance of protecting it, and the knowledge that had been hidden for over 100 years. Lena realized that the crystals were not ordinary. They seemed to hold energy, a power connected to the forest itself. She held one in her hand, and it felt warm, almost alive. The note explained that the crystals were part of a larger secret, a connection between the forest and the people who had cared for it long ago. Lena felt a deep sense of responsibility. She understood that this was more than an adventure. It was a mission. As Lena studied the map and the scroll, she noticed a pattern. The paths led to a place deep in the forest, a location marked with a large tree surrounded by stones. The letters and notes had hinted at this place, describing it as a center of knowledge and discovery. Lena knew that she had to find it. The forest had been guiding her to this exact moment. She carefully packed the scroll, the crystals, and the smaller box into her bag. The pendant around her neck glowed softly, as if it was happy to be part of her journey. Lena took a deep breath and stepped out of the hollow. The valley was quiet, but she felt the presence of the forest all around her. The trees, the moss, the stones, and the streams were all part of the journey, all part of the secret that had waited for over a century. Lena followed the map through the valley. The path became more challenging as the sun began to set. Shadows grew long, and the forest became darker. She moved carefully, guided by the pendant and the symbols she had memorized. Every step required attention, courage, and patience. The forest tested her again, but she felt ready. She had learned to observe, to trust her instincts, and to respect the secrets she was uncovering. As the evening approached, Lena came to another clearing. This one was larger than the last. In the center stood an ancient stone circle. The stones were tall and covered in moss, arranged in a perfect circle around a smaller tree in the center. The air felt different here, warmer and more alive. Lena knew that this was the place the letters had spoken about. She stepped inside the circle and looked at the tree in the center. It was small but strong, with bright green leaves and thick roots. Lena placed the crystals around the tree, as instructed in the note. As she did, the forest seemed to respond. The leaves rustled, the wind whispered softly, and a gentle glow surrounded the tree. Lena felt a deep sense of connection. She understood that the forest had been waiting for her, and she was part of its secret now. The scroll and the letters had spoken the truth. The forest held knowledge, energy, and wisdom that had been protected for generations. Lena realized that she had been chosen to continue the story, to protect the forest, and to learn from its secrets. She felt proud, excited, and determined. Her journey was far from over, but she knew she was on the right path. As the night fell, Lena sat beside the tree and looked at the glowing crystals. She felt at peace. The forest, the cabin, the boxes, the maps, and the notes had all led her to this moment. She understood that this was only the beginning of a journey that would reveal even more mysteries. The adventure was alive, waiting for her to follow it further into the heart of the forest. Lena sat beside the small tree at the center of the stone circle, watching the crystals glow softly around its roots. The forest was alive with quiet energy. The wind moved gently through the leaves, and the branches above whispered like they were telling her a story. Lena realized that this moment was the reward of her patience, courage, and careful observation. She had followed every clue, every symbol, and every instruction from the cabin, the boxes, and the letters. Now she was standing in a place that had been waiting for her for more than 100 years. She studied the tree and noticed a small knot in the trunk. The letters and scroll had hinted that this tree was special, but they had not revealed everything. Lena knelt down and pressed her hand on the knot. To her surprise, the wood shifted slightly under her fingers. Her heart beat faster. The tree itself seemed to respond to her touch. Lena pressed more carefully, and a hidden panel in the trunk slowly opened. Inside, she found a small wooden chest. It was finely carved with symbols similar to the pendant and the boxes. Lena lifted it gently and set it on the ground. She opened the lid slowly. Inside, there were several items, a small book, a wooden key, and a bundle of letters tied with a ribbon. The book looked very old, but the pages were well preserved. Lena picked it up and began reading. The book told the story of the person who had built the cabin and hidden the boxes. It described their life, their love for the forest, and their desire to protect it. They had discovered secrets about the forest, knowledge that could be used for learning and guidance, but only by someone worthy. The letters explained that the forest itself chose the person who would continue their work. Lena realized that she had been chosen to carry on this legacy. The notes in the chest included instructions for caring for the forest and understanding its secrets. They described the purpose of the crystals, how they preserved the energy of the forest, and how the pendant acted as a guide for the person who followed the path. Lena felt a deep sense of responsibility. She understood that this was not just an adventure. It was a calling, a task entrusted to her to protect the forest and its secrets. The wooden key in the chest looked similar to the one she had already used. Lena examined it closely and realized it matched a small door hidden in the hollow of the tree. She inserted the key, and the door opened to reveal a tiny chamber inside. There were shelves built into the walls, filled with old scrolls, small tools, and jars containing seeds and crystals. This was a hidden library, a place of learning and discovery. Lena felt awe as she stepped inside. She carefully explored the chamber. Every item seemed to have a purpose. The scrolls contained more detailed maps, instructions for following paths in the forest, and notes on plants and animals. The jars held seeds from plants that were rare or almost extinct. The crystals glowed faintly, filling the small space with soft light. Lena understood that this place was a treasure of knowledge, hidden and protected for over a century, waiting for someone to find it. Lena sat on a small wooden stool and examined one of the scrolls. It described a special place deeper in the forest where the most important secret was kept. According to the scroll, this location was connected to the energy of the forest itself. Lena realized that she had reached the beginning of the final part of the journey. She needed to follow the new instructions carefully. The forest had guided her this far, and she trusted it to continue guiding her. With the chest, the scrolls, and the crystals packed safely in her bag, Lena stepped outside the tree hollow. The forest was quiet, but it felt alive with energy. She followed the directions in the scroll, moving carefully along the hidden paths. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the ground. The air was cool, and the forest seemed to watch her as she moved. Every step brought her closer to the final secret. After some time, Lena reached a narrow passage between two large rocks. The map showed that this passage led to a hidden grove, a place untouched for generations. Lena pushed aside the branches and stepped carefully into the grove. The sight took her breath away. In the center of the grove stood an enormous tree, taller and wider than any she had ever seen. Its branches stretched high, and its roots formed patterns on the ground that looked like a natural staircase. The grove was filled with light, even as the sun set. The crystals she had placed along the path seemed to guide her, glowing faintly to mark the steps. Lena approached the enormous tree and noticed a carved symbol on the trunk. It matched the symbol on her pendant. She placed the pendant near the carving, and a soft glow appeared around it. The tree seemed to respond, as if recognizing her presence. Lena examined the roots carefully. There was a small opening at the base of the tree. She used the key from the chest to unlock it. The door opened to reveal a hidden chamber. Inside, there were shelves filled with scrolls, books, and jars similar to the ones in the smaller tree. In the center of the chamber was a stone pedestal. On the pedestal lay a small, ancient book with a golden cover. Lena knew immediately that this was the most important item. She picked up the book carefully. The pages were filled with knowledge about the forest, its energy, and its history. The book explained the purpose of the crystals, the paths, and the hidden cabins. It described the people who had protected the forest for generations and their hope that someone worthy would continue their work. Lena realized that she had been chosen for this responsibility. She felt a deep sense of honor. The scrolls in the chamber gave her instructions on how to preserve the forest's secrets, how to care for the plants and animals, and how to continue the legacy of protection. Lena spent hours reading and understanding the instructions. She knew that this knowledge was powerful, but it was also a responsibility. She would have to be careful, patient, and respectful of the forest and its energy. As night fell, Lena lit a small lantern she had brought. The chamber glowed softly, filled with the energy of the crystals and the knowledge of the books. She felt connected to the people who had come before her, and to the forest itself. She understood that the forest had chosen her for a reason. She was not just discovering secrets, she was becoming part of the forest's story. Lena carefully packed the most important items into her bag. She decided to leave the crystals in the chamber for now, knowing that they needed to stay to protect the forest. She carried the books and scrolls she could manage, and stepped out into the grove. The night air was calm, and the stars shone brightly above. The forest felt peaceful, as if it was acknowledging her courage and determination. She made her way back along the hidden paths, following the symbols and the glow of the crystals. The journey back was quiet, but Lena felt energized. She had discovered the forest's greatest secret, a treasure of knowledge and energy that had waited for over a century. She realized that the adventure had changed her. She had learned patience, courage, attention to detail, and respect for nature. By the time Lena reached the wagon cabin, the first light of dawn was breaking through the trees. She looked at the cabin with new eyes. It was no longer just an old structure in the forest. It was the beginning of a journey, a place that had chosen her to uncover its secrets and continue the story. She carefully placed the books and scrolls inside the cabin for safekeeping, knowing that they would guide her in the days to come. Lena took a deep breath and looked around the forest. She had started the journey lost and uncertain, but she had discovered a hidden world full of knowledge, energy, and secrets. She knew that the forest would always be a part of her, and she would continue to explore, learn, and protect its mysteries. The adventure had reached a remarkable conclusion, but it was also the beginning of a new chapter in her life. With a sense of peace, accomplishment, and wonder, Lena stepped out of the cabin and into the forest. The trees swayed gently, the wind whispered softly, and the forest seemed alive with a quiet, knowing energy. She walked forward, ready for the next journey, knowing that the secrets of the forest would always be part of her story. Lena smiled. The forest had chosen her, and she had honored its trust. She was no longer lost. She had found her place, her purpose, and a story that had waited for more than a century.